This is Chasing the Cutoff with Troy Eid. Conversations with professional people age 40 and older who balance busy careers with excellence in endurance athletics and extreme sports. From Denver, Colorado, here's Troy Eid.
Welcome to Chasing the Cutoff. I'm Troy Eid, and with me is Tom Downey. Tom, how are you?
I'm great. Congratulations on your big birthday run.
Oh, thank you. I did the Pinoti 100, which we could talk a little bit about, but we want to talk about you. and we've been friends for a long time. What year did we meet, do you suppose?
We met through legal political circles. You were representing the governor. I was representing the attorney general, opposite political parties, but they got along very well. You were chief legal counsel for the governor, and I was working for the attorney general. And a different time.
Different time. Republicans and Democrats actually not shutting down the government or anything.
Absolutely. Got along, really enjoyed each other. You know, it was a very different time.
But you made yourself into an Ironman. And we're going to talk about how you become a triathlete. You had, as I understand, you had a lot of success in sports when you're in college and so on. And then, like a lot of us, you're a successful lawyer. You got 3 lovely daughters, and you went through life, and you weren't always putting necessarily fitness the number one thing that you were doing, but you decided to come back to that. So we're going to talk a little bit about your journey, because you just did something really amazing, which I want to talk about, maybe we start about, which is Alcatraz.
Alcatraz.
Swimming Alcatraz. So what is that? Tell us about swimming Alcatraz. What is swim Alcatraz?
Swim Alcatraz is you leave from the island or just short of it, where the prison is, and you swim just over a mile to San Francisco. It is a fascinating race, scary because of the lure of the sharks, the waves, the freezing cold, the current. It is, even though it's a mile and a quarter from the island to San Francisco, you end up swimming about 2 miles because the current sends you down towards the Golden Gate Bridge. And if you mess up, out into the Pacific and shark bait, as they told us over and over and over again.
How many of you started the race?
There were 14 of us that did it.
Wow.
3 boats that brought us out, and 12 that finished. I'm just going to let it sit so people think they were eaten by sharks. No. It was tough. There were a couple people that got back into the boats, and then they're very nice. Before the boats hit shore, they let them back in the water so they could finish the race, which was exciting.
So you live in Colorado, and we're in downtown Denver right now, and there's not a lot of open water here, really, at least not with big waves in it. So where did you train for that?
Carl Madison Rec Center, Colfax. Right across from East High School. And so, no sharks, blue line in the center, no waves. It's pretty easy. No salt to get in your nose and your mouth. No one yelling at you, that kind of thing. And then during the summer, there are races that local folks organize up at the Cherry Creek Reservoir. So little open water, but not the same waves, not the same cold. It is quite different.
So did you wear a wetsuit?
Yes. So I wore a wetsuit. I do sleeveless just because I still feel new at this, and I want the arm motion.
So were you a swimmer growing up?
Never.
Never. What possesses someone to swim from Alcatraz to San Francisco? I mean, I remember Clint Eastwood, right? Escape from Alcatraz. and I grew up thinking, and I've been out there, right, as a tourist, and I'm not much of a swimmer, but I remember thinking that looks really, really hard. The city's right there, but that those waves are really big. I mean, when you're standing at the dock at Alcatraz with the National Park Service boat, you're looking down there, and the waves are pummeling the rocks. So what possessed you to want to do that?
Well, you are right about San Francisco. You went to Stanford, so you are quite familiar. Because it was a bucket list item. It was a big goal. And as I started my getting healthy process for my daughters, I wasn't a swimmer. I had swim lessons. I could swim. But for decades, I had only been throwing my kids around in the water, and that was it. And then when I started my program, the place where I was the weakest was the swim. I could go up and back and up freestyle, but then I had to doggy paddle back the third length. And eventually that became my Zen place. When I run, I don't really run. I speed walk, kind of jog. When I cycle, I can have headphones in. I can be watching the scenery. I can be listening to music or a podcast. But in the water, it's just you and your thoughts. And it became just a very peaceful place for me. And as every athlete wants to do, and I'm a wannabe, boy, just as a tangent, I've listened to all of your episodes and I feel outclassed just by being here.
Well, I do too. By all of them, including you.
You are all remarkable.
All
but you take your weakest point, right? If you're a cyclist, if hills are your worst, then you challenge and you try and get hills, right? That kind of thing. And swimming was my worst. And so I pushed it. And that's the big goal is Alcatraz, because the distance is doable, just over a mile and a quarter. But boy, the waves, it is choppy. And the cold, that just saps the energy out of you. The thing I wasn't thinking about was the nausea. I was nauseous halfway through because I'm doing this in the waves, smacking my face around. The salt getting in my throat and my nose, that is a little unnerving. The fear of sharks, omnipresent. I learned later from my daughter, who was on one of the watch boats, that there was a sea lion right near us, but we didn't know it at the time, thank goodness.
You might have thought it was a shark. Right?
That's right.
I mean,
that's
anything
right.
in the water. And the water's not exactly clear,
no,
as I recall. So.
No, can't see. But I was incredibly lucky because it was, for San Francisco standards, a gorgeous day. It was relatively flat. For me, it was monstrous, the waves, but for them, it was nothing. The cold, it was bitter cold for me. For them, balmy, perfectly fine. Sunny. For me, it still seemed overcast and cloudy and ominous, like there was a bad movie theater theme song going on in the background the whole time. But
how long did it take?
It took just over an hour, which isn't bad.
It's a long time to be cold in big waves, though.
It's a long time to be cold, but exciting. And one of the differences is, as opposed to if I'm doing a normal swim, you toe in, you get in, you splash around, you get used to it. This, you're literally jumping off a boat. And so they tell you, don't have a heart attack, exhale as you go in, you'll get used to it. And so I had steeled myself, and then I was underwhelmed. Yes, it was bitter cold, but not as I had led myself to believe it was going to be.
Had you trained doing that as well? Can you train? I mean, here doing that?
No, I suppose I should have. And sometimes it's cold, right? Early in the season when you do stuff up at Boulder Reservoir, but nothing like this. And, anyone just getting into the pool, I would train, this is going to sound pathetic, by jumping into the pool instead of stepping into the pool.
Yeah. No, I get it. That works.
It works. Sure. And then the really funny part, you and your guests talk about how much of it is mental. The stuff that you guys do is impressive. But so much, we were kidding before we started. For me, it is a measure of the people you have on here that a standard question you have in your repertoire is asking about hallucinations. That just level sets the whole thing.
You didn't hallucinate though, right?
I didn't hallucinate.
You didn't have time. You were too busy to hallucinate, I'm sure.
Couldn't. But the mental game that was really funny was do the whole swim and you visualize it, right? You visualize everything as you go. You visualize your equipment, you visualize the logistics, you visualize the swim itself or the race, whatever it is, up until the moment that you high five, right? And then then the pre-tape that you have in your head cuts off. Well, we finish. It was unbelievably exhilarating. And these are people that I've barely met. We went through training that morning. We're high-fiving, we're hugging, we're waiting for the others to come in. And that's where my, precog stuff had ended. But then we have to get back in the water, swim out to the boat. So freezing cold again, utterly exhausted. And then the pathetic climb up that teeny little ladder into the boat. That was demoralizing. And then the choppy ride back to the pier. But unbelievably worth it.
Wow, what a great story. So you've had quite the journey. Where did you grow up?
DC, born and raised Washington DC.
What did your folks do?
My dad was in the government. He worked in the White House. He was in the State Department. We lived in Berlin when I was little. He was the U.S. representative to Spandau Prison.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so big stuff when I was really little. Rudolph Hess was the only.
Yeah, I was going to say
left.
He died when, 94 or something? Is that?
Yes, at 90-something years old.
So was he there when your dad was?
Yes, he was the last prisoner.
Wow. Did your dad get to know Rudolph Hess?
Oh, yeah. I've been spending a lot of time with my dad now. And it's fascinating because I knew these things from when we were little. And we would talk about him. And he's got 3 books that I helped him edit. He wrote them. Legal aspects of certain things, legal aspects of the Civil War. One, the most successful slave ship revolt, which was fascinating, the Creole affair. And then the last one, he was a Cold warrior, was legal aspects of the Cold War.
So Hess flew to England.
Correct.
I guess he landed in Scotland, right? Yeah. And he had a plan to perhaps end the war. This was 1940, right?
1941, I think. Yep.
And he ends up, of course, being captured and interrogated once he confesses as to who he actually is. Of course, it's kind of an interesting story. And then we hold him, and the war ends, and all the Nazis are, they're killing themselves. They're killing a lot of other people, but fortunately, they're vanquished, but he's still in Spandau Prison for decades.
He was in Spandau Prison for decades, and one of the most fascinating interactions was when my dad, because the Soviets, not the Russians at the time, the Soviets were insistent to dehumanize them in so many ways. For example, they were not called Mr. Hess or Prisoner Hess or first names. They were given numbers, because when you use their name, it is a show of respect. And so when they got off the trucks from Nuremberg, then he was the 7th prisoner off. So he was prisoner number 7, and they could only address him as prisoner number 7. And then one of the things that because they were in the cell all day long, wasn't outside. And so my dad talked with his Soviet counterparts, British counterparts, the French counterparts. Can't we get him out in the yard? He's now so old. Let's some humanity here. Don't we show ourselves as better? And the Soviets refused. Mm-hmm. They said, absolutely not. But then they worked a deal. If it was viewed as labor camp, prison camp where he had to work. And so my dad went and met with Hess and said, we got it. You're going to have time outside in the yard, sunshine, activity. This will be great. All you have to do, hold a rake and pretend to move around a couple stones. And he absolutely refused. I am the deputy Führer. I am an officer. I am a senior member of the Reich. I do not deign to do manual labor. And that is who my dad got to meet and interact with at the end. And it was just, and just a little tie-in, the Denver Film Festival just ended. That was exciting for me. I'm vice chair of the board. And Nuremberg premiered during it. So we got to see all of it. It was great. Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. So
he's tremendous. He is very well done. Very well done.
Wow. So you grew up in Washington, D.C., and then you spent some time, because your father was at Spandau, spent some time in Berlin, and this was during Soviet era, right? And so you went to undergrad at William & Mary, right?
Right, in Virginia.
And you played rugby.
Played rugby.
So how'd you learn to play rugby?
I had played football in all growing up, Cub Scouts and middle school and high school, and then I had to make a decision because I did theater and I did sports. And then when I went to high school, you had to pick one. So I did theater instead, but always played, touch football and the other things, and loved rugby undergrad. It's a great, it's the most team-oriented sport there is. The person who scores isn't the one that made the great play. There are rarely individuals that make great plays. It is the group that gets things moving, and absolutely loved it.
And so how many years did you play rugby?
Played 3 years rugby undergrad, and then played a little bit of old boys, they call it. I worked for a congressman between undergrad and law school, and then played in law school.
So did you work for Charlie Rankel?
Yes.
Did I read that?
Hello, everybody. Big personality.
I met him a couple times, my own time on Capitol Hill.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Long ago, I worked for a congressman named Jim Colby from Arizona, who served for 22 years.
They were old timers together.
Sadly, a couple of years ago. But I met Charlie Rankel. He was a legend.
He was quite a legend. Big personality. And he would always remind those of us that were on his team how different things were when he was coming through. That he could not get his haircut at the Capitol Hill barbershop because he was African-American. And so even though he did well and he could get his haircut anywhere, he got his haircut at the Capitol Hill barbershop every time. And he defeated Adam Clayton Powell which people
legend from New York, right?
Legend from New York who ended up in jail. Maybe did some great things early on, but did some slimy things later.
So how long did he serve? I'm trying to think. So
Charlie Rangel, he was a U.S. attorney. Congratulations, you guys have that connection. He was an assistant U.S. attorney, and then I forget what year he went. It was something like 1970. 72, he was elected. Because
when I was a legislative assistant in the 80s, mid 80s, he was still there.
He's been around forever at that point.
I remember him.
And he would regularly win over and over again.
Yeah, it had to be a formative experience. So, and then you went to law school after that. You went to Villanova.
Went to Villanova.
And how was that?
I loved it. Again, the balance was fun. I was president of the rugby team, but also vice chair of the Women's Law Caucus. One of the things that we did was what's called the Roundhouse Project, where we represented victims of domestic abuse that are getting restraining orders against their predators. Mm-hmm. And that was fascinating. It's one thing to learn the theory of law, criminal procedure or civil law, whatever it might be. It's something else to be in the courtroom. And that's the overnight courtroom where prosecutors are getting search warrants and arrest warrants. And to go up and represent someone and get a restraining order on their behalf, it was wonderful. It was wonderful to do a, for lack of a better term, practicum like that and advocate. It was really neat. It was.
So one of the themes on this channel, on the podcast, is the fact that it's possible to be professionally very accomplished and also to be very serious and accomplished at endurance athletics. You have had this amazing career in terms of public sector civic leadership in Colorado. And I know you might be able to give us kind of a picture of that. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, you were president of the Children's Museum, as I recall.
Happiest job I ever had.
And tell us about that, because I remember I was very excited when I saw that someone of your caliber, I mean, big time lawyer and had done all these things in politics and so on, decided to actually make that his priority. And so tell us about that. What was that about? I mean, tell us about the Children's Museum for people who don't know about it. People not from Colorado, what is a Children's Museum?
Children's Museum is a place where kids learn through play. Every kid learns differently, right? Just as parents deciding where our kids are going to go. Some need a more formal structure. Some it's a block system. Some it's Montessori. Every kid learns differently, and learning through exploration, learning through play. And so there are things like probably the most famous is the fire truck. I will still say we because they are my friends that are still running it, and my heart is still there. So forgive me. But we have an original Denver firefighter truck.
I remember
that is there, and the kids put on the outfits. One of the things that we created was a 911 call system, so kids could learn what to do, all age-based. So if they're very little, all they're doing is dialing the 911. When they're older, then it is being able to answer questions such as, is he breathing? What happened?
Right.
What is your address? Those kinds of things. Learning about rockets by building them yourselves and with air pressure, designing models. Bubbles is a fun exhibit. And it's just a place kids don't get out enough. Kids are structured where things do things to them, right? It's done for them on the screen, rather than them doing it themselves. One of my favorite vignettes, because the museum has incredible supporters all over the Denver metro region, there would be massive, incredibly wealthy, good people in the best neighborhoods in Denver, gorgeous mansions, and we'd go there for a fundraiser, and there on the mantle would be this sculpture made by the grandkid that was made out of toilet paper rolls and egg cartons, and it was up there. I mean, literally, some of these places had actual Picassos, and there would be this from recycled materials, and that was the pride and joy.
I can see why. I mean, both our kids, Alex and Emily, they both went to different programs. Well, they went different programs there. I remember Alex went to rocket camp there.
Yes.
It was great. I mean, it was a wonderful time. And it's a great facility. And if anyone's visiting Denver or has never been there, it's definitely a must see place. And you don't even have to be a kid to go. It's so interesting, actually.
You have to. You're not allowed in. No kid can go without an adult. Right? No adult can go in without a kid.
Is that right? Okay, I actually didn't know that. So, but I've always been there with. Well, of course, they're not kids anymore, so they're all grown up. But
it is. My daughter was a volunteer later. I still go back for stuff. It is now the most popular children's museum in the country.
Wow.
Measured by number of visitors per square feet. So there are bigger children's museums that have bigger attendance, but relative to our size, and the people are incredible. The educators that are involved. It is clean if you're worried about health.
So how does a lawyer who's in a very successful larger law firm, regulatory practice, as I understand, how do you get to be president of the Children's Museum? How does that happen?
I got lucky with a board that was willing to take a chance. On the policy side, I've been very involved. I was chairing the board of the Colorado Children's Campaign at the time, and had overlap of friends, people that we know in common. And I was looking to make a change, and I got very lucky. And there were unbelievably remarkable people that are there. It is one of the things I'm the most proud of career-wise. The people that were put in place when I was there, the guy who was my CEO is now the CEO still this many years later. The marketing director is the COO now. The team is the same. The changes we put in place still there. The expansion, remarkable. It's just a remarkable team, and the sustainability of it has been incredible.
So why did you go back to law then after that?
We were at the place. It was not in a good place financially. We were a couple months away from not making payroll. There were some other things that were going on. So having to make a number of changes, and then vaulting forward, just like for athletes, you want to set a big goal, right? Why Alcatraz-Swim? Because it's the biggest goal for me on the swim side.
Sure.
And we needed to set big goals, and the expansion was the big one. And so kind of the group, me providing the resources for the people that did the real turnaround, and then setting the big goal, getting in the capital campaign consultant, getting in the architect company, doing all the preliminary stuff. But I either had to commit for another 3 years to see the entire project through, or that was the time to go back in. And so ended up in nonprofit and government elsewhere. So over at the city and other places, and then eventually back to private practice.
So let's go back in your life, like a dozen years or so. What was your fitness like?
It was not. One of the things that I'll correct. Yes, I played sports, but I never considered myself an athlete. I was the slowest guy on my rugby team. I like to think I was smart and could make plays and do things, but I was always slow, and everything was about running. I played football, I played baseball, basketball, never excelled at them. I loved the camaraderie. I loved doing it, but was never, ever really good. And then I had a health scare, just like you and many of your other guests before me have talked about. I had a health issue. It turned out to be kidney stones, but at the time I didn't know it. I was on the emergency room gurney, waiting for tests to come back, and I won't use the language I said to myself, but I felt like a jerk at the time.
A lot of pain, I'm sure.
A lot of pain. And what am I doing? I was so heavy, and I'd been so heavy for so many years, and I had talked about doing something.
Now, what's heavy?
What's heavy?
Yeah, what does heavy mean?
Heavy was 60, 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And
well, what do you weigh right now?
I'm not going to, come on, bashful. You can ask me my age too? I did just turn 60. I did just turn 60.
Congratulations. That's great. Welcome to the older American club.
But no, I was quite heavy, and it was demoralizing. And I always talked about, and there's always something else getting in the way.
So I don't remember you being, of course, I've known you for a long time. I don't remember you being heavy, but I don't remember me being heavy either. So, but I was. So
well, I'm a big guy. I'm thick boned. I hide it well. But I was heavy and not in great shape. And so I met with my doctor, and I said, I know we've been talking about this for years, but now I'm serious. I need to do things. And so his recommendation was a few things. First, do things little bits at a time, let them set, and then move on to the next thing. Except on the exercise front, where he suggested triathlons, because I had tried running before and was just never good at it. So, you get an injury and then boom, you're out. And the idea to mix things up, I had terrible knees and I have terrible feet. My feet, I would get horrendous blisters every rugby game, bleed every game. Skiing, just the boots. I would always get, bad blisters and then have to hobble around for a while. But by mixing it up, it would be something different.
Yeah.
And so that was 10 years ago.
Did you get a coach, or how did you start?
No, I did that thing where I didn't want to figuratively be that piece of exercise equipment that sits, and you hang your dry cleaning on it, kind of thing.
I know about that. So
everyone has been through that. And so I started off very slowly. I didn't get a coach, but I looked stuff up. I started reading things. And then there was a friend of mine who was a tremendous athlete all through high school and college. He was a runner at Duke. And he said, hey, I'm going to be out in Colorado to do a triathlon up in the mountains, up in Keystone. You want to do it with me? And so I set that goal 9 years ago. And he was the logistics guru. He was going to be in charge of everything. I was just piling on. And then last minute, he was stuck on a work trip out of the country and couldn't make it. And I just felt all alone. I was also kind of an idiot because I didn't know everything that was going on. I thought, we'll swim in the reservoir up there at Keystone, the lake, and then we'll bike around. I had no idea, because I just didn't know what to look up, that you go up the mountain from there and back. One of my partners looked it up beforehand and said, what kind of bike do you have? Because I had an old, crappy, used, 20-year-old mountain bike. And he lent me one of his bikes that I ended up using. But it was a remarkable experience. Finished, barely alive, and it worked. And I was hooked and said, this is what I'm going to try and do.
So did you, when the doctor said, you need to do triathlons, try that out because you can mix it up, did you say to yourself, I'm going to be an Ironman? Or did that come later?
It came fairly quickly. That I want to.
Why did you want to be an Ironman? Did you just like the name Ironman? It is cool. I mean,
yes, I wanted the tattoo.
I wanted. It's very cool.
It was, if you're going to do something, set the goal, right? When you were in law school, I don't know if you dreamt about drafting wills or arguing in front of the Supreme Court. I dreamt about arguing in front of the Supreme Court.
No, actually, I was in a used bookstore in Annapolis when I was working on the Hill. And I had not gone to law school yet. I was deciding whether to go to law school or business school. I couldn't decide between the two. And I saw a book on the shelf, U.S. Attorney, by Whitney North Seymour. And it was about his role in bringing down a lot of the Nixon people during Watergate. And I read that book in one sitting. I stayed up that night, went home, to D.C. where I was working on the Hill. And I read that book in one sitting, and I said, I'm going to be U.S. Attorney of Colorado. I'm going to move back to Colorado, and someday I'll be the U.S. Attorney of Colorado. And eventually that happened through just a lot of really strange coincidences and seeming coincidences. And it was a very unlikely journey. But yeah, I mean, that was the goal I had from age 23 on. I actually went to law school thinking that I would be the U.S. Attorney for Colorado. Wow. I wish I got to serve longer. I was lucky to have the time that I had. It was great. I don't know that I'll get to do it again. But
well, and as a lawyer in Denver, you did a great job.
Well, you're very kind to say that. But I mean, it is funny how we do these things. And I didn't have a good vision of what I wanted to accomplish. And I certainly didn't think about, I'm going to argue in front of the Supreme Court, or I certainly didn't want to draft anybody's will, and I've still never done that. So I don't know. No offense to that. So
it's a very important job, and
do you think lawyers get a bad rap? I mean, what do you think in terms of?
Deservedly so.
But there are a lot of lawyers who do some kind of endurance athletics. There are quite a few of them, I think, maybe per capita. It's one of the. So were there other people you knew who were in the law that were doing things like this, like trying to be Ironman or trying to ride the Rockies, on your bicycle or whatever?
I had friends that did some, but not the big stuff. One woman who I knew not well, not close, Ellen Hart. Formerly Ellen Hart Pena.
Yeah, I know her.
She's a great
runner.
Marathoner.
Yeah.
And my wife worked for her ex-husband, Federico Pena, when he was in the Clinton administration, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Energy. And Lori was, in essence, her staff person in addition to the work. And so we knew them well. And she was inspiring in that way because I got to see what she did and how she morphed herself. She was always this great athlete, and then she went into triathlons. And so, one of the things that your guests have talked about a little bit here or there, when you do something endurance like you guys do, running across Scotland, losing all the skin on your feet, right? Those kinds of things, crazy. But you end up with these relationships with people that may be short in time, but deep in impression.
True.
And that happens with, Ellen and I don't hang out. We text every once in a while. Mm-hmm. But boy, when Ellen Hart, when I'm at a race and, I pass her because she's, 17 miles ahead of me. She's lapped me 3 times. And she says, hey, Tom, go get him.
Yeah.
That gets you going.
Sure.
That gets you going. And so she was the first one that I know someone who does this. Mm-hmm. She was doing triathlons at the time, and that was a hook for me, if that makes any sense.
So you have an amazing wife, Lori Fox, and maybe tell us a little bit about her. But what was her take on all this when you're like, I'm going to go out and be a triathlete and be an Ironman? What did she say? What did she do?
Boy, I don't remember it at the time. I don't think when I first started that I ever said I've got the goal of doing an Ironman. I made a big mistake. I'll tell you about that later. When we were leading up to Alcatraz, because she was very protective, very loving, but very worried. But I think in the beginning it was just about getting healthy. That's all it was. I got 3 daughters, like you said, and need to get healthy for them. And I was, a jerk, not the term I used to myself, for letting things go for so long when the number one thing we have to do as dads is be around for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything else comes after that. You can't be a good dad if you're not around for them. And so she was supportive in doing this get healthy thing, but it wasn't a focus on doing triathlons until I kind of got hooked. And like anything else, it's sustainability, right? The measure for me is not whether I finish or whether I do well, it's whether I get back up and do it again and set the next goal. Same thing, for a business, if you're not sustainable, what good is last year's quarter? Your diet, your eating. Hey, it's not whether you fall off, it's not whether you cheat on this or how things go. It is the long term and whether you stick to it. It did because we had, it now has been 10 years and our kids are 24, 21, and just about 18. Mm-hmm. But they were younger then. And so it does take time, some of these long things. And it is easier today because the kids are far more grown. So tell us about the Ironman, did the transition to going half Ironman, full Ironman, and I'm really interested because you didn't have a background in triathlon. And so you had to probably you didn't have a lot of coaching. So you had to kind of find your way. And there are a lot of people, I think, out there who will hear this, will see this, that maybe are thinking, yeah, I'd like to try to do that too. That's something I'd like to do. So what do you say to those people? How did you do it? First, anyone can do it. If I could do it, and I know, that sounds pathetic, but I was fat and deformed feet and bad knees that have been destroyed during rugby and never, ever saw myself as being able to do it. But sticking with it and setting an unreasonable goal was key. So I guess the first thing is I did get help along the way. Like I said, I didn't want to be that unused piece of equipment and started off really pathetically. Literally, the first few times I swam, I didn't even have goggles. because I'm not going to go and spend the money on goggles until I do. And then I did. Of course, that's stupid, right? There's not going overboard on the fancy things that you're not going to use versus being an idiot. And, I'm showing up at work looking like I'm drunk because my eyes are all bloodshot, right? That's not the confidence you instill in your clients and your partners.
How did you find time to train? And this is the issue that people always say, right? And I know we've all felt it at one time or another. Oh, well, I might want to do that, but how am I ever going to find time to train? And the answer is you make the time, and then you try to hang on for dear life. But how did you do that? How much time did it take, and how did you ramp it up? And
great question. In the beginning, it wasn't that hard because it's not, I was swimming 5 laps, 10 laps in the beginning. You spend more time getting in and out of the shower than you do actually swimming. A sprint triathlon, it's a 5K, even for slow guys like me, that's 40 minutes. And so it's not a ton. So it wasn't a lot of time in the beginning, but it was aches and pains. As I increased the distance, it did get more difficult time-wise. It's very lonely out there. And I did get help a couple times. I literally would hire the lifeguard teenager at the pool, to give me a couple lessons. The last one, the assistant coach for the girls' swim team, I donated money to the swim team, and he coached me on some things. Getting advice from friends. One of my partners is a superb cyclist, and I would go with him, get the crap beaten out of me, be exhausted, but learn technique. You watch YouTube videos, you talk to people as you go, you watch people during races.
How much time a day, though? Like even now, like you're getting ready. Let's just say you're getting ready for some kind of Ironman competition, either a half or a full. But how much time are you talking about for you?
I will exercise 4 or 5 days a week. One of the big mistakes I made before was not allowing my body to heal, so not taking time off. I would crash by doing too much. I will do at least 45 minutes a day, and I'll do shorter during the week, and then on weekends do in the kind of early ramp up, an hour a day, 2 hours, and then it's 8 hours. You're blocking off that time and getting in the miles, getting in the time.
So talk about that. So the 8 hours, talk about that.
So for an Ironman, for doing a triathlon, it's the transitions. One of the lessons that I had to learn was, I can go out and do a 1.2 mile swim. Hey, I feel great. And then, a couple days later, I can do a 50 mile bike and I'm feeling on top of the world. And then do a, 10 mile, again, I don't run. I got bad knees. I got bad feet. No shoes work for me. But I speed walk and sort of kind of jog and scoot.
Sure.
But, do that for 2 hours or whatever it is. And it works. But then when you do them together, yowza, to finish a swim and then get on a bike, and maybe my legs are fine because I've trained for it, but my back muscles, they are hurting being in that position for 4 hours in a half Ironman. That is just deadly, and that's what it takes. So one of the mistakes I made was I'd be on the Peloton, and I'd be pedaling and doing my thing, and I'd be sitting up checking my phone. I'd be, changing the TV and stretching and doing my thing, when you got to be down in the position. And
Absolutely.
Get used to it that way. So much of it is mental. It is understanding that you can do this. And I know this sounds silly. For me, part of the training is driving out to wherever it is and doing those long rides where you're just in your head and the miles go by faster. And
is that because of visualization? Is that why it's so important?
And understanding how to take care of time. How, that's the mental game. When you're a kid, you sit in class, you don't look at the clock. You think, half an hour's gone by, then you look up and it's only been 7 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
No, that's right.
You do that for a big training and just that mental ability on the time. The other one is when things go wrong, and something always goes wrong.
Right.
I have the equivalent of phantom pains, right? I am 100% certain my tires are going flat. And of course they're not. I just think that way.
Right. I totally get that.
I think of Civil War veterans who were lost an arm, right? And they would have phantom pains in an arm that didn't exist. And I know that's a silly analogy, but, endurance folks, I've heard your folks talk about the hallucinations or the other things that are going on. The guy that thought he was following other runners when really it turned out he was following sheep. Your mind plays games.
Mark McDonald.
Oh, yeah, he was tremendous. He was absolutely tremendous. The toughest one for me, I was doing a half Ironman, or maybe it was a aquathon, so not the run, aqua cycle, 1.2 mile swim and then the 56 mile bike. It was the full. I was training for the marathon and I did a full swim, 2.4 miles, and then I was doing the bike, 112 mile bike. Okay. And I had failed the one before. I didn't finish, and I was really disappointed. And then I was out on the next one, and I was going to do it, and I got bitten by a dog. It was
really
absolutely crazy. First, acknowledge how slow I must have been going.
During a race, though.
During a race.
So what were you doing when you got bit?
This was out in Palm Springs. I was riding, and there was a family walking with their dog across the desert, and I slowed down to kind of let them and then sped up. And the dog came behind and bit me in my left shin.
Wow.
And I had that white blinding flash of light, the unbelievable pain, and couldn't see. Then I could see and I catch myself before going off the road. And I looked down and it's bleeding. And another rider saw it and was calling to the other folks. But, that's where...
What'd you do?
I kept riding. And it was because I didn't want to fail again.
This explains why you were frothing at the mouth with rabies at this moment.
They did have to give me shots, but the organizers were incredible. They, because word got out, because this was one of those where you do loops. And so you see the same people, but they sent a motorcyclist, one of the crew on the motorcycle, who tracked me for the last, whatever it was, 25 miles with me and making sure. And it was still bleeding, but it slowed down.
Yeah.
And then it was and then I finished and I was just elated. Absolutely.
Is that your one and only dog bite, or have you had others?
One and only dog bite.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I've never been bitten by a dog. I've had lots of close encounters where I thought I was going to get bitten by a dog. Of course, I've had as we could discuss, I've had a lot of wildlife issues, but unfortunately not eaten. But I had one dog attack that was the scariest one of my life. It was on the Navajo Nation, and it was in a race that was a relay race from a place called Natsasan or Navajo Mountain down to Rainbow Bridge on Lake Powell. And it was a relay race, and I had to run the 28 miles down, and then my partner was waiting at the bottom. He'd been taken in by powerboat, and he had to run back. And so we started at 4 a.m, and the Milky Way was out, and it was super cold, and because this race was in October. And I was in first place of this race, about maybe 4 miles in, and there was suddenly a dog that was it was snarling and growling. I couldn't see it, and it was right there, and it was absolutely terrifying. And I was going faster and faster. I thought, this is it. I'm going to get bit for sure. But,
and you knew it was a dog, not a coyote or a wolf?
I knew it was a snarling dog, and it was a really loud dog, and I was all by myself. And then when the race was over, and I didn't get bit or anything, the race was over, we were in the powerboat going back the long way to Antelope Point, and then 110-mile car ride back to the starting line because it's a remote place. And I said, hey, what about that dog? Did anybody else have a problem with the dog? Everyone was like, what dog? There was no dog. There was no dog. So I've often wondered whether the dog was real, because things like that have happened to me in Navajo, and I maybe there was no dog. But in my mind, there was definitely a dog that was going to kill me. So, but you actually got bit, so there was a dog for sure.
Bit.
There wasn't a spirit dog. There was actually a dog that I can't imagine what that would be like. You must have been absolutely shocked to be minding in Palm Springs. You're not out in the middle of nowhere. It's Palm Springs, right?
Well, this is out in the desert outside of outside
it's
of Palm
not exactly
Springs.
the most remote part of the world, right? I mean, it's kind of an affluent area, right?
Yes, yes.
Some crazy dog goes after you. So what did the people do whose dog it was? Did they apologize? Or
No, I don't think they were the affluent Palm Springers that you think of.
I got you.
They were out, don't know where. No, because I didn't talk to them. I sped away. I was trying to get away. So. And then my favorite moment was after finishing and then going to the medical tent. And I'm with 3 other guys. I'm more body fat on me than all of them combined. And they were like, "Hey, you're the dude. You're the one who got bit. Yeah, like, are you kidding? Crazy. Look at you guys. You actually win. Like they had finished the whole thing. I had only done the swim and the bike
because you're bleeding out. So what's your next goal in terms of what are you training for right now?
My goal is to do a real Ironman, branded Ironman in the time allotted. So the one that I did a few years ago, Ironman length. But it was one I was training for one in the desert in California that was very flat and supposed to be good for beginners. And 2 weeks out, they announced that there was an issue with the wildlife in the reservoir and that there wouldn't be a swim.
Okay.
And that just didn't make sense to me. And triathlons do that. They add, if there's a weather issue, they add on a run beforehand.
Of course.
And so I searched all around. I found another race in Florida, in Central Florida, that was the same time, so fit with my training schedule, and went and did that. Not a branded Ironman. It was wonderful. The Grand Floridian, Great Floridian. And the only issue was I had been training on flat, and Florida is flat, except right in the center, there are what they call mountains. We would call them hills here in Colorado. But the entire race was just up and down these mountains, and it killed me. What should have been a 7.5 or 8 hour race on the bike was 9.5 hours for me. And it just killed me. And by the end, my feet had soaked through, and they were already bubbling. So I finished it in 20 hours, and regular cutoff for an Ironman is 17. So my goal is to do a branded Ironman, a real Ironman, in the 17-hour regulation time.
And what are you looking at in terms of where would you do that, do you think? Do you have a preference?
Yes, most likely it would be back at the Chesapeake Bay. They've got one, Ironman Maryland, which is a relatively flat course right near the Chesapeake Bay, Choptank River. And I did the half there this past summer.
Oh, great. And how was that?
It was great. It was great for me because, and you and I talked about this before, I had fallen off my training a little bit. We had some family issues that we were dealing with, and then I was back on. And so a year ago, next month, I did a half Ironman in California again, Palm Springs, different one, and failed. 8.5 hour cutoff. And I just didn't do it right. And I was 18 minutes over. So I finished, but disqualified. The cutoff caught me.
I don't think it's a failure. I know we always say, DNF is did nothing fatal. And,
right.
People are funny that don't do these really high risk endurance things. I DNF'd as you may know. I ran the Southern States 200-mile race last March. I DNF'd at mile 193 out of 200 miles, and I fell and without getting my hands up, struck my head on a rock and concussed myself. And my buddy Chris Hill had to carry me out, and it was heartbreaking because I was literally. The race was 203 miles, as it turned out. So I was about 9 or 10 miles away, but I still had 10 hours to go. I could have basically crawled, but I was in no shape to do anything at that point. And I was disqualified at that point in time by the time I could finally get out. I came back and a lot of people who don't do these things are like, oh, you must be really embarrassed. Or I was like, well, no, I was disappointed. I cried about it to myself, but, you don't get better unless you push yourself. And and it was funny because I just did this Pinoti race, which was in the same area.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. 100-mile race in the mountains of northern Alabama, a Western States endurance race qualifier. And, it was a really hard course. But I had a great race. The race, I really was able to plan and execute the race successfully. And I could even estimate before what I thought my finish time would be. And I was very close. I was within about 20 minutes of the time I thought I would finish, given my state of training and my preparation and the weather conditions and all the different things I was taking into account. And I would have known none of that had I not had the DNF in the Southern States race in the spring. And I don't think I would have the confidence to get in and out of the aid stations the way that I did. trying to keep it under 3 minutes, even when I really wanted to stay and hang out and enjoy the nice hospitality. And, so I appreciate what you're doing, because you're constantly, you have your goal, and, you sometimes it doesn't go exactly the way you plan, but you seem to be able to apply it. Again, how do you motivate yourself to do that, Tom? What is your method? Do you pray? Do you listen to music, like Rocky music? I mean, do you listen to something else? I mean, do you meditate? What do you do? I mean, what is the inner source of all this?
Swimming is a zen place for me. Okay. And you can do that, even if you're hurt, even if you've got blisters, you can always swim. So that's good. No, just always a desire to get better. And is this going to be a failure, or is this going to be the beginning of my next win, right? If am I going to learn something from it? And there are so many folks. One of the things all your guests talk about, the people in the community
Absolutely.
Kind of defined largely. So one of the mistakes I've made in the past was my eating. Matt Mosley is a friend, and he does big swims, huge swims. And, he advised me about what food to eat. Like, he'll literally do the 20-mile kind of things or more. And
amazing. One
of the switches, I used to do all of the synthetic, the gels and everything. And Matt was like, no, eat real food. And I have bananas and bread and real things along the route.
And that works for you.
It works for me. You got to figure out what works for you. A friend of mine, Fred, he's a kayaker. And so he swims with me sometimes. And one of the most motivating things I'll remember, because when you run, there are always people on the course, right? Whether they're there for you, you're inspired by others. On the bike, there's always some. Swim, there's nothing. Yeah. And I still remember being out for a really tough training swim that one of these groups puts on up at the Boulder Reservoir. And I was having a tough time. And then all of a sudden I hear, "Go, Tom, you got it, man." And it's Fred, who's on one of the kayaks. He's a volunteer. You don't expect to hear cheers in the middle of a reservoir. That's awesome. The loneliest place. That's awesome. When you're out there. And so there are people along the way, figuratively, that are part of this thing. And that just this Alcatraz swim. We spend, a couple hours going through the training, the safety, all of those things. But then, there's this kind of instant bond that's a little weird, because you barely know each other. But, I'm now Facebook friends and texting with some of the people, and they're all younger than me.
I know that. I know that works.
That were in the swim. And so I think it's the other people that are around, that are a part of it. To get a congrats from my wife, to get my kids excited about it. That's fun. That's when I did my Ironman, which was absolutely devastating. I had been thinking for years and for months and for literally 20 hours that day, what am I going to say when I cross the line? And one of my dear, dear, dear childhood friends, Pat Paddock, he lived 4 hours away. He drove down and met me on the run, ended up grabbing my bike. They knew how pathetic I was. They weren't going to DQ me. And he grabbed my bike and rode next to me all of those hours while I was on and talked me through it. I had to stop. I had to take not just bleeding my feet, bled through my shoes. Yeah. It was ugly.
So sorry about that.
Hobbling.
It's terrible. I've actually done that, but only once. Sounds like this happens to you more often than just one time. So.
Yeah. Well, you with the Scotland race, you lost the skin on.
Yeah, and then I was bleeding through my shoes. It's awful.
And Pat ran ahead and was there to film me when I went across. And after all of that time, and I had everything in my head of what I was going to say, because I started this journey years earlier to be healthy for my girls. And all I could get out was, "Hey, girls." And then I just broke down in tears.
I get it.
Just broke down in tears, uncontrollably.
I'm sure they're very proud, though.
They were very proud. As I said, I did an aquathon. I did a 2.4-mile swim. I did a 112-mile bike. I did a 26.2-mile run, walk, hobble, and then cried uncontrollably. I did 4 events.
You did them in the right order.
I did them in the right order. That's right. That's right.
So what do you think then? You're 60. You'll be doing this for a while, right? You're gonna do some other things, stage racing or some other form of athletics. Anything kind of speaking to you that's not triathlon now that you are getting the triathlon under your belt and really getting that down?
Yeah, that's a great question. Always thinking about what's the next, what's the big goal. My difficult goal will be to do another Ironman in the regulation time.
Sure,
right?
of course.
17
of course.
hours, which is tough.
I have no doubt about that being successful. So
yeah, I've got a path to do it in the next year or two, which I'll do. But I do think long term, how much of this is sustainable? What do I want to do next? And I made the mistake when my wife, leading up to the Alcatraz swim, was doing the. Are you sure you want to do this? There are sharks. There are sharks.
Yes.
There are sharks. Right. That was. And why do you want to do this? That kind of thing. And I wasn't thinking clearly. And I told her, just blurted out, well, I want to climb to Everest Base Camp 1. And I'm not a climber. I've never done a 14er.
Okay, so climbing. There we go.
But that's how asinine it is. Yeah. I've never done a 14er. We live in Colorado.
You've never done a 14er?
I've never done a 14er. I'm not a hiker.
Okay, well, we could do one sometime if you want. We can do one right now. It's really dry out there for November. You just have to bring a coat.
That's right. Well, a friend of mine said, do a 13er, because everyone does the 14ers and they're really busy.
Well, there are 600 13ers, so.
Yeah, so that's my ridiculous goal where I haven't even done step 1 yet.
Yeah, well, there's, it's a good place to live if you want to do, climbing. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat Colorado.
And plenty of people to do it with.
Absolutely. So, well, you'll have lots of options, I'm sure. So how about, reflections on law practice and being a lawyer and being a triathlete, and how do you hold it all together? How do you stay polite and chipper for your clients? And tell us about your law practice. You have a fascinating law practice. So.
I love my law practice. I'm a regulatory attorney. So
what does that mean?
That means anything with a license.
Okay.
Anything with a license. So when I was in the Attorney General's office, I represented the Department of Regulatory Agencies. So I went after bad doctors to revoke their licenses, or accountants, others. I represent folks in front of them. I represent medical practices, physicians, dentists, architects, everyone. That's one. Liquor licenses, a ton of liquor licenses. When marijuana came in, I was running the license department for the city. I was in the mayor's cabinet, and creating legalized marijuana was just a bizarre thing to go through.
Talk about marijuana. So do you use marijuana?
I never had. So it was very funny. All my friends, not all, friends did in high school and college, and I never did, not once. And then all of a sudden, I'm the regulator.
Yeah, you're the regulator, so.
And it was a little bit crazy. So, of course, I wasn't going to then. And that was weird because literally I had to get a legal opinion from the acting city attorney. Would I be aiding and abetting the execution of a federal crime by signing marijuana licenses? You couldn't.
Yeah, right.
The overwhelming majority of the licenses were in Denver, and we were the first. And so it was was I going to be arrested, which was crazy. And I never did then. When I was leaving in 2013, I told my wife, I think I'm going to try a brownie, see what all the fuss is about. And she's quite the guru of public affairs. And she said, don't be, I won't tell you what she called me. Don't be an idiot.
Yeah, right.
It's the best differentiator you have. Every other lawyer in this thing, they are, criminal defense lawyers are passion folks. The lawyer that's never tried the stuff, that's your thing. And she was absolutely right, because I would testify at legislatures
they'd ask you,
around the country.
Yeah, they'd ask you about it.
They'd ask me about it. And in my PowerPoint slide in front of, AGs and governors groups was always, no, never tried the stuff. I know the law. But
I don't know if it's a good segue, but are you familiar with following the enhanced games, this concept of enhanced games?
Not closely.
The idea of really drugging athletes in supposedly medically, scientifically ways that are going to enhance performance, and then having all of them compete in Las Vegas and other places, turning everything else on its head, all the standards that we've kind of come to know and love, making Lance Armstrong.
Not my thing.
The evil Lance Armstrong universe, the universe we all have to live in. So,
yeah, no, I've read about it. Not my thing. I think there's something about reaching in and pouring out that spills over into the other. You asked about kind of how they relate.
Yeah.
I don't usually think of myself as a detail-oriented person, but I have to be for my job. And that's why I like having a fun practice, because you're going to do something. The organization, the self-discipline for doing these long things that you do, that I like to think I do, just the organization, sticking to it, every time you wake up and, you're going to go for a run or a ride and it's cold and you just don't want to do it and you do it anyway. If you can do that, you can do anything.
It's funny because I get out the door early in the morning, usually around 4:30 or so, I'm out year round. And my habit is to always make coffee. If my wife is home, I'll make coffee for her and I'll put it in like a thermos container or a Yeti so it stays warm. And there's always coffee left over, so I might take a swallow of the coffee. But if I forget to do anything in the morning before I head out, it's the making of the coffee, because I don't care about coffee. If I don't have coffee, I don't smell coffee, whatever. It's not that I'm against it. I just don't even think about it because I'm just awake. I'm ready to go. But it wasn't always like that. There was a time in my life I couldn't drag my sorry ass out of bed. It was too hard. And I guess it's just all these years of routine. So,
and that's the thing, making them a habit, making them routine, and being on top of them.
Well, do you have any parting? We should probably wrap this up, I suppose. Although I'd love to listen to you all day, it'd be preferable to the legal work that we both have to go and do. I suppose. Just getting to the clients, but any other kind of advice or insight for people who are thinking, I think I want to try to get into something that will help me to live a healthier life and to maybe be there for my family and to be more with my family, more engaged with my friends and my family, my relatives, my clients, frankly, the people in my, my church or my synagogue or my mosque, people that you want to try to be closer to in your community.
I think we are better for our kids and our family if we do ourselves to the max. If we be big is what my college theater professor would say. Be big. Be yourself and be big. And if you are your full self, then you are better as a family member. You're better as a friend. You're better as a parent. And so set the big goals, but then also set, just as importantly, reasonable immediate goals. The immediate goal can be just going to the gym that day, even if you don't do anything. Getting up, getting dressed, going to the gym, pull out your phone, sit there, don't do a thing. You know what? The next day, go back and do one lap or one rep.
Right.
Set a reasonable goal, immediate, and then have the big ones long term. And the only thing that matters is sticking to it.
Well, you're an inspiration, Tom. So thank you, Tom Downey. Thanks for being here.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Troy.
it.
Really appreciate it.
Godspeed.